Hello, 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 and good morning. Yay. I'm going to try to keep eye contact with everybody in the room and also with the Zoom. We've got a handful of folks there. So this is the new challenge of how we do hybrid events now. But I am so delighted and excited and energized to see so many friends and old, folks who haven't even met in person before in our space. Welcome back to the Leadership Louisville Center. Yay. This is our first in-person member event since February of 2020. So yeah, I've started to have a little teary-eyed experience, but so excited to have you all here. For those who I haven't met, my name is Holly Prather, and I'm vice president of the center and part of the team that puts together our member experience. So thank you for being here. And I know we have some guests also. So welcome, welcome. And I'm going to start off with a couple of slides. And Zuri, will you advance the slides for me on the keyboard? Because for some reason they're not working. Okay, go to the next one. We're going to try to get this clicker fixed for you, Cleo. I'm going to call my friend Aaron Miller and figure out why. Oh, now it's working. Never mind. The tech gods came through for us. So I just said Aaron Miller's name and like something magical happened. That's how it works around here. Thanks everyone for your membership and support of the Leadership Louisville Center. Many of you are longtime supporters, and that has made a huge difference for us especially in this past year. And we hope that it's made a difference for you as far as continuing engagement with your own leadership journey and a supportive network. Even though we've been in the Zoom world in the past year, we hope that has meant a lot to your leadership journey. And you guys have probably gotten emails from us, and there are a lot of exciting things happening in the tech universe of the Leadership Louisville Center. We just transitioned to Salesforce as our new CRM, and it also includes a new leadership network portal, which I hope you have been able to log in and kind of check out. But it allows you to easily connect with your classmates and alumni and look at your rosters from last year or 10 years ago or more than that. You can also easily register for things and also just connect in different ways. So there's a lot of great resources there. So please check it out. And thank you again for your support. And as always, we like to give you, the reel of upcoming things happening with the center. As members, you have access to membership discounts for all of our leadership green room courses. And we've got a couple of those coming up. Those are coming back in person in the classrooms. Yay, another round of applause because we're super, super excited about that. In July, we've got a women's leadership course called Find Your Voice and Kick Some Glass. I just posted an article in our women's Facebook group yesterday about the conversation around this she session. And so if you or any of the women leaders in your organization need that level of support and need a little bit of, like business acumen and things behind them to help them, raise up on the leadership hierarchy, this is a great course for that. And then, of course, our partnership with Ken Blanchard Company continues, and we're bringing situational leadership back in August. So check that out. And then an event series that we launched during quarantine was our Leadership Green Room Micro Learning. These are free virtual sessions that you can participate in. And we've got one coming up in August that actually our own Aaron Miller and Zuri Johnson are going to facilitate. It's Understanding Bias, Head, Heart, and Hands. And this is curriculum that we are developing in partnership with the Center for Creative Leadership. So we're super excited to give folks a little taste of that in August, leading up to a course that we've got coming up in September. So come check that stuff out. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our Ignite Louisville applications are open. If you've got next generation talent that you want to invest in. I know we've got some Ignite alum and class participants. Maybe your picture's up there. Yeah. Beautiful. When you're a model, you just get lots of pictures, and there's lots of fun things happening in the Ignite Louisville program. We had a virtual session yesterday, but this afternoon, we're actually having an in-person happy hour for business leaders or young professionals that want to learn about the program. So you can come, have coffee with us this morning and a drink with us this afternoon, or share that with folks that you might know. So that's what's happening with the Leadership Louisville Center. And on to today's event. We've got the amazing Cleo Battle here with us, but These events are made possible by our amazing sponsor, Baird. And Jim Allen has been a longtime community trustee. He does amazing work with lots of boards and in the education of our community. And he is here with us on the Zoom from Milwaukee. And we are going to invite Jim to say a few words. He's the vice chairman of Baird, to introduce Cleo and get us started. Okay, Jim, if you can unmute yourself. Is there anything on our end? We're getting there. Ask to unmute. I think he's unmuted. Jim, I think we can hear you.
Hear me now?
Yes, yay.
Thank you. Well, I wish I could be there in person, but now that we're meeting in person again, our Baird Executive Committee took place here in Milwaukee yesterday. So it's a beautiful day up here. If I could share my screen, you'd see a great view of Lake Michigan, but I'll look forward to being back in Louisville and being with you the next time around. So thank you, Holly. At Baird, we really appreciate the great work of Leadership Louisville, and we're so proud to be your partner in sponsoring the Thought Leadership series. It's been a great relationship for us. And moving along, it's now my pleasure to introduce our special guest for today's program. Cleo Battle has worked in the hospitality industry for nearly 35 years and will transition to president and CEO of Louisville Tourism starting tomorrow, July 1st, 2021. Prior to coming to Louisville, he spent 12 years as vice president of sales and service of the Richmond Convention and Visitors Bureau in Richmond, Virginia. Cleo is from Denver, but has jumped to serve the Louisville community. He graduated from Leadership Louisville in 2015 and was a 2020 Bingham Fellow. He currently serves on the Meeting Planners International Board of Directors, the Kentucky Derby Museum Board of Directors, the Louisville Sports Commission Executive Board, the Louisville Regional Airport Authority Board, the Louisville Zoo Foundation Board, and is a board member for the Northeast YMCA of Louisville. So he's a busy guy. His most recent industry recognition includes Events Industry Council 2020 Social Impact Award winner, Business First, Louisville's inaugural Power 50, as well as the Courier Journal's 12 People to Watch in 2021. Today, we look forward to getting to hear his vision for Louisville tourism, and more specifically about his contribution to renewing downtown's vibrancy in his role with the downtown revitalization team. It's through that downtown revitalization team effort that I've had the pleasure of getting to know Cleo and see firsthand his talents at work. We look forward to hearing from Cleo today, and more importantly, we look forward to his leadership in our community going forward. So Cleo, it's my great pleasure to turn the microphone over to you, and thank you for joining us today. And to all of our guests, thank you for being part of today's program. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So Cleo, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jim. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Which way do I point this? I didn't do that. I think she did that. Okay. Well, as Jim said, I have no power because I've got 4 of Louisville Tourism's team in here, so there's no power at all. Yeah, good morning, everyone. And I am proud to be here with Leadership Louisville. I am a Leadership Louisville 2015 grad, best class ever. We have to say that, right? And then, of course, Bingham Fellows, we graduated this year. And what a year to have gone through Bingham Fellows. It was a great experience. Thank you, Aaron, for everything you did and the team here. But yeah, it's time to get to work. 35 years in this industry. And so I did want to take a little bit of time, and Jim talked about sort of my background. Yes, I'm from Denver. I'm a skier, and I'm still a skier, and I'm 57. And so as long as these legs allow me to ski, I'm going to ski. I went from Denver to Phoenix for a little bit of management training. Then I went to LA, worked in a couple different hotels in Southern California. I went from Southern California to upstate New York, Syracuse, Rochester area. And then as Jim said, I was in Richmond, Virginia for a long time, where I went from being a hotel GM to getting on the destination marketing side, which is the side I'm on today. And that's what brought me to Louisville here 8 years ago. So it's a little bit about my journey as to how I've gotten to Louisville. So why are we here? The Louisville Tourism team. It's all about visitors. And for us, we define visitors as leisure visitors, meeting and convention visitors, corporate visitors. We don't spend as much time in the corporate space, but we spend a significant amount of time in the leisure and meeting and convention space. Of course, my phone would ring. Not anyone else's phone in here, but my phone, right? Sorry about that. Just turn that off. So yeah, so in the meeting and convention space, so this is Kick, and this is what we try to do. What we strive to do is to bring visitors, fill up our convention center, fill up our hotels with visitors. This is KC. This was actually during the pandemic where we started to, earlier this year, we started to see business come into KC, primarily a lot of sports business, which I will show you in a moment. Visitors to our community, in 2019, 19 million visitors visited Louisville annually. About 11% of the 19 million is diverse. Most of that diversity is African-American. But a lot of people, 19 million people. When I started here in 2013, we attracted about 12.8 million people to the community in 2013. So in that 6-7 year span, we've grown considerably with visitation. Derby. So this year, hotel occupancy for Derby was about 73%. Which obviously we always sell out. And to give you some sense, if you are a limited service hotel downtown, you probably start at about $1,000 a night with a 3-night minimum. That's the limited service. As you get into the more full service hotels, those rates go up. So obviously our hotels are looking forward to 2022 and getting back on track with the amount of money that's made and the amount of visitors that are in the community. As I talked to you about, we've seen 2 volleyball tournaments. Doug Bennett and his team have done a fantastic job. We've seen 2 girls volleyball tournaments up to nearly 10,000 people coming to town since March. So we've seen a lot of sports business into the market, which has been great. It's helped us to sort of get back to where we're trying to get to. Give you a sense of 2019 again, and I hate to keep going back, but that is our point of comparison. Louisville Tourism team ourselves booked 881 meetings and conventions for 2019. 798,000 room nights, about 1.8 million attendees associated with that. So that just gives you a sense of the kind of business that we were doing in this market prior to the pandemic. That's our goal. Look at 4th Street Live. That's what we wanted to look like every weekend. And so, it's all about bringing visitors to this community and what the impact of those visitors can have. There's Forecastle. We're hoping to have Forecastle back in 22 down at the waterfront, full of people. Bourbon and Beyond. We've worked a lot with trying to bring that back. Obviously, you guys know it was down at Riverfront and now it's out at KC. We've got Louder Than Life this year, but we are hopeful to get back in the next couple of years, getting back to have the 3 festivals all in a row. So that's our goal. But look at all those strangers, shoulder to shoulder. That's where we want to get back to. We're a little spread out in here right now, but we want to get back to that. So how do we do this? So I'm going to give you just a little bit of what we do at Louisville Tourism. So it's about feeder markets for us. These are our feeder markets. And what you see here are drive markets and direct fly markets. So you think about St. Louis, Cincinnati, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Nashville. Those are drive markets. And we spend a lot of time in those markets with advertising, programming in those markets. Same thing in our fly markets, Chicago, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New York City, Detroit. We have direct flights. And so that's why we spend most of our time trying to attract leisure visitation from those markets. We send weekly emails out of what's going on in the community. We work with influencers. As I said, we do advertising. We do a lot of promotion in market. Linnell Morgan over there, they do a lot of being in market, doing promotions for our brand. We want to establish our brand in these markets and entice people to want to come to visit. Visitation for us, obviously we're not a beach community, so you're not coming Saturday and stay until Saturday. Most of our visitors, we're going to get off of work early on Thursday and get on a plane, get to Louisville Thursday night, and you're going to stay Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, hopefully Sunday. We'd love to have Sunday, but that's typically who our visitor is, and we have no problem with that. That's a great visitor, and we've seen a lot of it. So that's kind of our market. We also do, when we do advertising, it's not just print or not just digital, but it's also video. And so I want to show you a video that we produced this year. This is called the Old Fashioned Road Trip. And so obviously we all know here that's the off the old fashioned cocktail, but this is a advertising we did this year.
Sometimes the most unforgettable moments are just a road trip away. So call up some friends, pack up the car, and head to Louisville to experience everything Bourbon City has to offer. From award-winning restaurants and world-class cocktails to the world's only true urban bourbon experience. It's time for an old-fashioned road trip. Visit bourboncity.com.
Simple as that. So we get that out into those feeder markets, trying to encourage visitation into Louisville. The other thing we spend a lot of time with is development, whether it's museum and attraction development, festival development. We are considered a destination marketing organization. There's organizations like us all over the country, multiple ones here just in the state of Kentucky. But it's interesting that destination marketing is transitioning a bit to destination development from a tourism office perspective. And so when you think about that, we're still going to market the community, but we're also involved, and you're going to hear more about that later, we're also involved in helping to develop. And so what you see here is a 2-year project that Jessica Morgan and some of that team, our tourism team, worked on with our museums and attractions to develop the Unfiltered Truth Collection. This collection tells the story of Black heritage, history, and culture from what happened here in Louisville in these particular museums. So for example, the Derby Museum talks about the first 15 of 28 jockeys that won the Kentucky Derby were African-American. While we may have known that in this community, some people may have known, we weren't telling that story. It wasn't part of an exhibit at the museum. So now we're telling that story. We're telling the story of Locust Grove and the enslaved at Locust Grove and what their lives were like. We're telling the story of Roots 101, the journey from being in Africa to get into this country and the history of everything that's happened with African Americans in this country. At Evan Williams, we tell the story of Tom Bullock, the first African American to make a cocktail, but to develop a cocktail book from the Pendemis Club here. I think it was it 1919? Was that? Yep. In 1919. So you go to Evan Williams and we're telling that story. So while these stories existed in our community, we weren't telling the story. So now we're telling the story. So part of the development that we've done from our team to help our community. And again, it's all about the power of travel. It's great when you all go to Nulu and you spend your money, or you go to the garage bar and you spend your money. That's great. But what we want in the community are outside dollars to come in. We want visitors from the outside to come in and spend their money in our community. And that's what whether we're doing it from a museum or attraction, whether it's the Derby, whether it's a convention, whether it's a sporting event, we're trying to bring outside dollars into our community to spend dollars. So let's talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going to go. I will tell you, I'm extremely bullish on our community and where we're going to go, especially in the tourism lane. Our infrastructure is fantastic. And it was, as I said to you all, when I arrived in 2013, 12.8 million folks. And then in a short course of 6 or 7 years, we're at 19 million people visiting our community annually. Whether you think so or not, living in the community, we've got something special here. And people, whether they're in California, Maine, or Florida, they want to come visit. They want to enjoy it. It is, the bourbon experience, and it's always important for us to say, with bourbon, this is not the hurricane in New Orleans. We're not trying to get people drunk. This is about culture and experience and craft. Our goal with the bourbon is to be more like Sonoma and Napa. That's where we want to go with bourbon. We want that kind of experience for visitors when they come here. And so when you think about what we have here, we've got great bones with that bourbon. The Ali experience can only be experienced here. The Churchill and the Derby experience can only be experienced here. And those things are huge for people looking for a weekend and to really enjoy themselves. We did, before I go to the next slide, before I talk about this, we did have a moment in 2019 where Nashville had gotten so pricey that we were beginning to see a lot of the bachelorette parties and bachelor parties in downtown Louisville. It's not that we don't want the visitors here, but it's not the crowd we are marketing to for folks that's to come and run around and be drunk the whole time. And as we all know, for those people that drink bourbon, bourbon is not an all-day drink anyway. So it's a short-lived party if you're trying to drink bourbon all day. So only on... Well, maybe let's start with like 3 or 4 o'clock. So when I talk about infrastructure, just, our hotel development we've seen in the last few years, we've seen such growth with our hotels. The distilleries, when I got here in 2013, there was not a distillery. There was no distillery here. And by 2019, we had 10 distilleries downtown. Talk about the built environment and what we've been able to do. Any of you were ever in the old convention center? Yeah, this is beautiful. The state did a fantastic job with this building. Our clients tell us how good of a job we've done with this building. So think about our infrastructure. We've got great infrastructure here. So yeah, I'm very bullish on our ability to come back and visitors being back in town. And if you've been downtown walking around on the weekends, there's a lot of people. They're coming back. We've got lines at our distilleries. So I'm really bullish on where we're going and what we're going to be able to do moving forward. So let's talk about downtown specifically. The city put together, the mayor's office put together the Downtown Revitalization Committee. Great committee, as Jim talked about. You had over 100 leaders involved with this committee to come together and develop ideas. And they took us and they divided us into subcommittees. You had downtown commercial occupiers as a subcommittee. You had an events committee. You had a marketing and communications committee, downtown residential occupiers, small businesses, and then tourism. And the goal was for each of these subcommittees to come up with ideas as to things we can do downtown, how can we improve downtown. And with all of the ideas, we were charged with having a diversity, equity, inclusion lens with every single idea. And so it was well done. So once we sort of got through developing the ideas and we looked at, okay, so what's the time frame for these ideas? And so ideas were submitted. They still need to be approved by the city as to whether they're going to do them, but there's just numerous ideas. And so just in the 30 to 60 day window, we've got the orchestra doing free concerts. There's sidewalk repairs, more downtown waste baskets. And maybe that doesn't matter to you, but when you're in the visitor industry, you want visitors to come and say, oh my God, this city's so clean. And so that matters to us. I think one of the other neat things that came about was the Millionaire Marketplace, which is for Black-owned businesses. It's a pop-up mall that's taking place at 4th Street Live now. In the 90 to 120 day window, and Jim and I talked a lot about this the last time we were together, a downtown dollars program. So as we bring in the employees back downtown, giving them dollars that they can spend in downtown restaurants so we can help to bring our restaurants back. You know, I will say this, and it's always going to go back to tourism. You know, we need a vibrant downtown for tourists. You want tourists to come to town, you want meetings and conventions to come to town, and they can go to restaurants, they can feel the vibrancy of a community. So when you're on our side of that, we don't want restaurants closing. We need our city to be alive, because people come and then they post, and then did they have a great experience? Did they have a bad experience? And we need them to have a great experience. So, so the Downtown Dollars program, there's talk of a food truck event at Waterfront Park. We want to activate Whiskey Alley. I think if you know Washington Street, if you know where Whiskey Alley is, behind Old Forester and Doc Crow's. One of the areas in our space is a tourism master calendar. One of the things we've tried this before, but we want to have a master calendar where all the events in the community live. So for all of us in this room, we need a place where we can say, where are all the events that are happening? Where can I find them? I'm not talking about your cousin's wedding. I'm talking about events for the public. And so we're working to do that at Louisville Tourism, to own the master calendar for the entire community so that there's one place for events. You know, in the 120-day window, we're talking about Black arts festivals downtown. We want to recruit more Black-owned businesses downtown. We are being charged, if the funding comes through, with developing an app for walking tour. Sorry, Rose. So they want to launch a downtown 502 living plan that encourages people to want to live downtown. So a lot of these ideas are, they're all in these individual spaces, but together they will make downtown great. I think we've got to get our employees back downtown, and I think that's going to help considerably. Obviously, I'm not one of the rock throwers of the demise of downtown. And listen, I have neighbors who haven't been downtown in 5 years, and it's easy to throw rocks when you haven't been downtown in 5 years and say downtown is horrible. I just don't buy it. This is the core of our community. And whether, you know, you have growth on the South End or growth on the East End, and those things are great, but the Yum Center, our Performing Arts Center, all that's downtown. And so we as citizens of this community, we need to support our downtown core. So I love what the Downtown Revitalization Group has been able to do, and the ideas. We hope that they get funded so that we can launch them, but just great to bring all those leaders together. So the last area I'll go into is just a little bit about, yes, I'm moving into this job tomorrow. Me and Andre move into our jobs tomorrow, which is going to be exciting. Strategically, from a destination perspective, my goal is that we're going to have 25 million visitors by 2030. We had 19 million in 2019. By 2030, I want 25 million visitors in this community. As I talk to you about our not a transition, but I guess in addition to what we do from destination marketing, is destination development. We're spending much more time in that. And so when I think about our strategic plan moving forward and how we're going to help this community, one of the things I always say to folks, a great place to live is a great place to visit. And so how do we help this to be a better place to live? One of those areas is transportation. What you see here are trolleys and rail from different cities. And where's Jenny at? You know, this is one of the things we believe we need to do. I think traditionally, and Louisville was very traditional in its transportation. How do we get people into the core of the city? How do we get people back out to their homes? And we need to expand transportation and grow that. And that's one of the benefits we see for visitors moving forward. Neighborhood development. One of the things we saw prior to the pandemic, folks would come to town, they're staying downtown, they may do a dinner downtown, and then they want to get out and they want to experience a community like you all. Where do you eat? Where do you hang out? Where do you drink? They want to go to the Highlands. They want to go to the West End. They want to go to Germantown or Butchertown. They want to experience all of that. So as we move into the future, we want to help work with neighborhoods to develop those neighborhoods to be better for visitors, whether it's through art. It could be a number of things, but we're going to work more with our neighborhoods to make them more visitor friendly. Bourbon. We talked about the vertical of bourbon, and bourbon has been great, but we want to talk now about the horizontal growth of bourbon. How do we take that brand and make it more retail? And again, if you think about our goal is to be more like Napa and Sonoma, we want to grow the bourbon brand and the bourbon experience horizontally across retail and other types of outlets. I talked to you a little bit earlier about destination development, whether it's museum and attraction or whether it's museums. We've worked with the Ali Center to do their Ali Festival. We've been working with museums, as I told you about, with the Unfiltered Truth Collection. And we'll continue to do that kind of work as we want to help develop and create experiences for our visitors. The last thing I'll talk to you about is workforce development, which is interesting because prior to the pandemic, workforce development was an issue for us because we were growing so fast. We didn't have enough folks that were coming into the industry. Our industry is a $3.5 billion industry annually prior to the pandemic. 63,000 jobs here in the metro area are in tourism, hospitality and tourism. Unfortunately, nationally, 20 to 25% of our industry nationally has left the industry. Some of that's due to pay, some of that's due to just what's happened in the industry. Some of that's due to just our brand. You know, if I go to any of you that have a teenage child and your child says, hey, I want to go into hospitality and tourism, you're probably going to say, what are you going to do? You're going to make beds for a living? You're going to be a server? We have bad brand. And so we've got to work on that, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a convention center, whether it's Louisville Tourism. We have to work on telling a better story about a career that you can have in our industry. And we're working to do that. From a workforce development perspective, we work with agencies like Salvation Army, Goodwill, Kentuckiana Works. We work with universities and colleges to develop workforce plans, JCPS, as well as junior achievement. For those of you familiar with junior achievement, we actually do things with junior achievement, the eighth graders. We're trying to get our brand in the eighth graders. Hey, think about our industry when you're 14 years old. So lots going with workforce development to get our industry back. I know I sort of ran through all this very quickly, but I'd love to answer questions. I was just trying to give you sort of a brief of what's going on at Louisville Tourism. How long was that?
Yeah, it was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. That
Sure.
was, there's so much exciting things going on. And I know that there was some hot topics that you mentioned in there. So I'm going to invite anyone here or on the Zoom to ask your questions with Cleo. We've got a few minutes for that. And Aaron's got a microphone. So if you want to raise your hand, so the people on the Zoom can hear your questions, if you'll use the mic, we can all hear each other pretty well in here, but.
Hi, good morning. Is it on? Okay, I sort of have a two-part question. One is, I feel like there is a trend with beer craft as well, with craft beer coming along, and it might be where bourbon is now. It might be 10 more years maybe before we see craft beer be where bourbon is today. So I'm wondering about your thoughts about that. And then maybe part of that answer is we're trying to really be a very regional community. And, you know, Bardstown has always owned that bourbon theme. How can we, or how is Louisville Tourism incorporating some of our regional communities into what you're doing around this work, making this a destination location, which is amazing. You all have done an amazing job. So big kudos to you.
Thank you. So as it relates to craft beer, we certainly, again, that goes back into development for us. We would love to have an experience around craft beer and to tell that story like we tell me. From a Louisville tourism perspective, there's never enough hotel rooms and there's never enough stories. So we would love to tell that story and to develop it into a product that someone gets in a car or gets on a plane to come here to experience. So we're all over there. And the event, was it just last weekend or was it the weekend before, the craft beer? Yeah. So have had some contact with them and had some conversations with them about that moving forward. So absolutely. You know, as it relates to regional and bourbon, I think one of the things prior to when I've arrived here, our relationship with the Kentucky Distillers Association probably wasn't the best. Today, it's a fantastic relationship. We're on committees, we work with them. We're in conversations on these committees with folks from around the state. on how we can all work together for the visitor. Because what we do know, yes, we're charged with marketing Louisville and bringing visitors to Louisville, but we also know that folks get in their car and they go to Buffalo Trace, they go to Woodford Reserve, they go down to Jim Beam, they want to experience that as a whole. So we work with our partners out throughout the state. I think the relationship with KDA and working with all of them will, for the members that KDA has, that's going to help us continue to move forward with that. But absolutely, we'd love to work with Bardstown. Bardstown's had some significant growth as it relates to bourbon. So we want to continue to market that with the visitors that are coming to town.
So when you talk about recruitment or getting people into the hospitality industry, has there been, and this may already exist, so my bad for not knowing, but is there a magnet school program for hospitality through JCPS or anything like that?
Yeah, so the GLI Talent Academies, GLI and JPS or JCPS came together and created the Talent Academies. It was interesting when we got involved, they were well into the program and there was no hospitality schools. And now we work with DOS and Southern. Is there another one? That's it. Jessica really sort of leads our program with JCPS, and we're breathing life into it. We've sent the students at DOS and Southern through our Certified Tourism Ambassador program. Again, we're trying to create interest. We're trying to retell the story of career paths in our industry, and we want to start with high schoolers. I know and I don't think this is a knock on Louisville, but I know when I first got involved with this program, they talked about the fact that 30% of the seniors that graduate from JCPS schools go to college. Doesn't say that they graduate, doesn't say what happens, but 30% of them go to college. I don't know. And I think what I remember nationally, the numbers aren't that different. But my question was, okay, where's the other 70%? We want those opportunities. We tend to be a stripes on the arm industry. Spend your time in it. You can be very successful at it. And so that's why we're there. But I wouldn't call it a magnet school as it relates to tourism and hospitality, but we do have a school with a hospitality and two schools with a hospitality and tourism track, and we're growing it at those schools and getting more of our partners, our hotels and museums and attractions involved.
All right, it's coming to Hal.
Thanks, Aaron. You mentioned having neighbors who haven't been downtown for 5 years. I've got neighbors. I work downtown, live East End. Neighbors who have been downtown in the last 5 years, but haven't in the last year and a half, and are reticent to. So trying to do my part to say, no, let's go downtown. I'll take you downtown for drinks, for dinner. It's safe. It's great. Curious to know, as you go out to these other communities and try to bring in conventions and volleyball tournaments and cheerleading competitions, are you hearing any of that negative stigma from the things that happened, just a couple times last year? What kind of reaction are you getting from the outside?
Sure. I was waiting for that question. Every time I speak, someone asks me that question. Yeah, absolutely. I think in September of last year, when the verdict regarding Breonna Taylor and that tragedy happened, sure, we were on the nightly news at 6 o'clock. And so, from a tourism perspective, you turn off your advertising, you're not doing any marketing, you're just quiet. And I think we were in that space for a few months until we decided to turn everything back on. I think most people spend the time in two places. You're going to say, I don't like the fact that you allowed the protesters to protest in your city. I'm never coming to your city again. I don't like the fact that you didn't prosecute those police officers for Breonna Taylor. I'm never coming to your city again. And so you have those two groups that tend to be on the extremes of whatever side that they're on. And then there's everyone else. And so, our jobs are to make sure we market and we present this community for what it is, and help people to want to have an experience here. I don't think we're hearing on a regular basis. Jessica's in our tourism and Doug's on our meeting and convention side. And we're not hearing that on a regular basis from anyone. And I think there's been so much that has happened around the country. It's not to say that what happened in Louisville and in Minneapolis doesn't catch people's attention, but it is not, it's not something we're hearing on a regular basis in our office. And believe me, people certainly take the time at Louisville Tourism to go on our website and say any number of things that we saw when everything was going on. So we get lots of feedback, but I don't think that's not impacting us today. I think at the moment in time, it absolutely does. But as time goes on, no. Yes.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Thurstone. I'm the head of St. Francis School. We're a two-campus school at 3rd and Broadway and then out in Goshen. And just sort of building off of that last question, I think it's my experience that I think Louisvillians have the biggest issue about coming back downtown. We've certainly noticed it. And just turning that to the positive, I also think Louisvillians are the biggest cheerleaders for their city, and they always want to indoctrinate people on how great it is. And so I'm sure you guys have things like this, but arming us with like, what's a 4-day weekend in Louisville? What would you do? You know, getting that information to us about recruiting our friends who don't live in town into the city, I think is another thought. And just wondered, I'm sure, like I said, you've thought of this before, but what, you know, I'd love to, I do want to bring friends to town and love to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah,
and we certainly have been asked that before. And if there's a knock on a tourism agency, is that we spend all of our time out of market, you know, and again, I think that when I talk about the transition to more destination development, it's turning our attention more in market. And how can we help to, again, great place to live, great place to visit. How do we help this to be a great place to live? And so I think you're seeing more of that from tourism agencies. Certainly at Louisville Tourism, you're seeing more of that. You're absolutely right. I will tell you, 8 years ago when I moved here, I'm living in a hotel and I'm going to Target and I'm going to the post office. I'm going to different places. And if I told someone I just moved here, they would lean in and say, oh, you're going to really love living here. And I thought, am I on candid camera? I mean, you know, because, you know, when you're in tourism, that's what we do. We say that. But for the stranger in Target to tell me that, or the stranger at the post office to tell me that, I thought, wow, people really do love their city. And so you're absolutely right. We have to do a better job of making sure that our next door neighbors that haven't been downtown in 5 years have a reason to come downtown. I think, yes, absolutely. And I think the downtown revitalization, that's what that's about. It's about what can we do to give people a reason to do business downtown, to want to visit downtown locally. And so that's what that committee was all about. But yes, Louisville Tourism is moving more in a helping to develop the destination better, to your point. But it's not something that we regularly did in terms of marketing activity to our residents. So something we need to grow into.
And I think Kelly will be the last question.
Kelly's last question.
I'm so glad to hear your question, because I have a great follow-up to that. So I'm Kelly. I work at Louisville Water Company. We're that ripple effect of everything you've talked about. So my question to you was going to be about that inward marketing effort. But to build on that, I mean, you have an incredible room right here of brands. What is there a strategy for internal marketing? Where do we fit into that? And not just from people, but financial resources as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. From a Louisville tourism perspective, I don't have an answer for that. There was, on the downtown revitalization group, there's a marketing committee, and most of that was from GLI in working to help market the city and brand the city better. They also lead the Live in Lou sort of initiative. But I think that's an area, both of your questions, I just think it's an area that we need to grow more into. At Louisville Tourism, we have all the content because we're telling everyone that lives somewhere else, here's all the great things to do. And so I do think there's a space there. I think there's an opportunity there, and especially from a Louisville Tourism end. Yeah, and I think to your question of brands and dollars, I think it's something that for us, Louisville Tourism, as well as partnering with GLI, would be where we're doing more of that now. Again, I think if there's anything from the pandemic you saw from downtown revitalization, you're seeing a lot of these agencies come together to work together. We've been doing this for quite some time. I think it's just in the last few months, we've been turning our attention to how do we bring people back downtown? How do we market downtown better? How do we make this a place that everyone can be proud of again? So that's just beginning to churn. And I think the first step in that was the downtown revitalization plan. But both of those are great questions and opportunities for us to step into that space. Thank you.
I'm going to close with the final question and also just a bit of recognition. So this is the eve of Cleo becoming the president and CEO of Louisville Tourism, which is a really important and critical Louisville institution. So I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
And yes.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask a leadership question, and also to build on Kelly's question, I want to find out what can the folks in the room and on the Zoom do to support you. But the leadership question I have is, in the past year and a half, you're now coming into a really significant leadership role. How have your priorities shifted, or what kind of are your priorities as far as being a strong community leader and a leader of your team? Like what are your leadership philosophy that maybe can impart some wisdom on the group here today?
Well, if there's anything that we took away at Louisville Tourism in terms of our own organization, is being able to lean in and for those of you leaders, just understanding childcare, understanding the schools and everything that was going on. And for some of our folks, just the anxiety and the challenge of what was the magnitude of what was happening. So I know from a leadership perspective, as much as we are balancing trying to get back to work as we had some fun in the office the last couple of weeks, we're trying to balance that out. We're trying to make sure it's not just get back to the office. It's 8:30 to 5. There's just more to working with our teams and understanding our teams. We've certainly, because we lost so much revenue in the pandemic, we've asked our teams to do more. And in asking our teams to do more, you've got to manage that very carefully. Almost every conversation I have with our leaders is about staff being challenged and the lack of time, because we're growing, visitation is growing, but we don't have the bodies. And so I guess the answer to your question is just more of an inward leadership view. We've got a community of hotels, museums, and attractions that have high expectations of everything we do at Louisville Tourism. And so we've got to make sure our team is strong. We've got an extremely experienced team at Louisville Tourism, and we're doing everything we can to hang on to that team and support them and as they grow. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm just thinking about it from what we've been through the last year.
Yeah, well, and absolutely a lot of conversations we've had at the Leadership Louisville Center as well, and trying to think about how we can be supportive to all the folks too. So lots to talk about. I hope you guys have enjoyed coming back together in person. Thank you, Cleo.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Role. I didn't have a slide and announcement up, but we do have our August Thought Leadership event confirmed. And we have another new leader in our midst with Andre Guest with Fun for the Arts, who takes on the helm tomorrow as well. So we will be getting to know him in August, I think the 19th. So look for your inbox for invitations to that. We'll see you there. Thanks so much for everyone for being here. Thank you, Cleo.
Thank you.
And please stick around and have some coffee and continue the conversation. Thanks so much.